An investigation into a crash turns into a homicide investigation. And 4 holidays later, no one has been brought to justice in the case. This is Unsolved. On Thanksgiving evening 2021, 911 calls start coming in about a reckless driver and eventually a crash off the service road of I-35. But investigators later ruled the death of the driver, 30-year-old George Michael Lopez, a homicide. His cause and manner of death, a gunshot wound. So here to talk about the latest in this case is Detective Christophe Wood with APD's Cold Case Unit. Thank you so much for being here.
No problem.
We know this day is really supposed to be a day of celebration, of being together with family. Of course, this one really marred by tragedy for his family. Talk to us about what we know about how he spent the day leading up to his death.
Well, George Michael Lopez spent the day out of town with one of his spouse's family. And then when they returned to Austin, they spent some more time with family. And then in the early afternoon, he left. And that's where our case begins, so to speak.
We know at some point he was spotted at a convenience store. The department has given us some screen captures of surveillance footage of him there. Was that the next place he went, or where did he go after he left his family's residence?
Well, he went to a number of places. He visited friends, and he visited a couple different sites. But the convenience store photo is important because it shows what he was wearing, what he looked like the day of the incident. And so if anybody has any information or if anybody recognizes him, because it was a pretty recognizable outfit, it was pretty much all denim, it would help us greatly.
So tell us a bit more about what we know he did that day, where he was heading, and do we know anything about when he may have been shot?
That was one of the difficult things about this case because, like as you said, it did start with calls to 911 about a reckless driver on 35. The car was seen swerving, collided with a concrete barrier, and then another call came in where the vehicle was seen after it had a low-speed collision with a mailbox on the northeast corner of Lambie and the frontage road of North I-35. The original 911 call takers, as they were giving information to 911, noticed that the victim had gunshot wounds to his person and to the vehicle. At that point, we did not know where the original crime scene was, and it did take a pretty good length of time to actually discover the original crime scene, and that was one of the things that hindered the original investigator.
You're almost working backwards at that point, or having to piece together a backwards timeline, it sounds like.
Yes, I mean, with homicides, a lot of DNA, a lot of evidence can be left on scene, but if you don't have that original scene, it makes it that much more difficult to piece everything together.
And that must have been really jarring for the 911 callers. Not only you're seeing this driver, behaving erratically on the road, and then to realize maybe why that he has been shot. Talk to me just a bit about the crime scene itself. How were detectives able to place where he was shot, and are you able to say where that was?
We believe that he was shot at a parking lot in the intersection of Burton and Oltorf, and we were able to piece that together through cellular phone analysis and Capital Metro bus video.
At that point, were you all going off of, I guess I should say, was he calling for help after that, or how do you know that is the place?
Based upon everything that we've gathered, like possible witnesses and his cell phone analysis, we believe that's where it occurred. The victim never called 911 for help. We don't know where he was going when he was driving. It's a possibility that he was going to the hospital, but we'll never know.
So you've now discovered where you believe that the shots were fired. Where do you go from there as an investigator?
You're several days behind the curve, so at this point you still have to, you still have to treat it as a normal investigation. You still have to try to get video, you have to talk to witnesses. Obviously you don't have your evidence. Like if it's an outdoor scene, a lot of your evidence is going to be washed away, kicked, driven over, a number of different things. So it does hinder you, but you just have to keep going.
Mm. Have there been any leads from some of those witness interviews or the evidence that investigators were able to recover from that scene?
Yes, there have been leads, and we are currently working on those leads.
Mm. Are there any suspects identified yet in this case?
There are potential suspects, but we're not naming the suspects at this time.
Mm. And can you tell us, I think when folks originally heard about this, and then when they'll watch some of the surveillance footage, it's jarring to see something happen on Austin roadways. Mm-hmm. Folks might be worried, was this random, or was this someone that George might have known? Are you able to say at this point, was this a random incident, or was it something that had developed out of his personal life?
We do, at this time, the Austin Police Department does not feel that this was a random event.
Mm. What have been some of the other big barriers in this case? You mentioned not knowing where the scene of the actual crime was, that scene being outside, but are there any other things that the department has encountered in trying to get this case solved?
So of course, the lack of evidence, the lack of physical evidence at the original scene is a big hindrance, but also where the incident occurred at the intersection of Burton and Oltorf, it does make it more difficult for victims to for witnesses to feel comfortable to come forward to the police.
And why is that maybe? What have those conversations been like with witnesses trying to get them to help with this investigation?
Well, it's, they have to live in that area where the suspects live. If the suspect is placed into, is arrested for an offense, but they get out rather quickly, then they might be they're in fear of retaliation.
Mm. Talk to me just a bit about this case being in the cold case unit. We've talked to a lot of law enforcement and investigators over the course of this series, and a question that comes up is, when does something become a cold case? But it sounds like this case has a lot of activity going on in it, with some leads and potential suspects as well. So how would you define, when something lands in your unit as a cold case?
I mean, it's based on a number of factors. One of the biggest factor is if the original investigator either retires, leaves the unit, or promotes. It's typically supposed to go to the next investigator that's assisting with the case, the secondary detective. If that detective is gone as well, if there's no active leads, if there's no, so to speak, hot active leads, the case can get bumped down to cold case. Mm. So,
what is that like as a cold case investigator, to often be inheriting cases that another detective has been working on? You're kind of coming in with fresh eyes. Do you find that can help an investigation? Of course,
yeah. Everybody works cases differently. Everybody works cases from different angles. They all have their strengths and weaknesses as investigators. So having another set of eyes, of course, helps. As a cold case investigator, I'm not driven by an active homicide. It's not fresh. It's a cold case. So we don't have the same timeline. We don't have the same deadline as a more active homicide case or a homicide investigator would have.
Mm. Kind of allows you to take a different position when you're looking at evidence and things like that.
Yes.
In this case in particular, the timing of it being on the holiday, I can imagine that's just heartbreaking for family. And then to come up on another Thanksgiving without their loved one. If you're able to share what conversations with family have been like over the years as this investigation has continued.
This is, in the cold case unit, we have family members that reach out at different time periods to investigators to ask or inquire if their family member's case is still being investigated. We have cases that are 40 plus years old that, we don't ever get contact from family member to see if there's follow-up. But this case, there is frequent contact from the family to make sure that this case hasn't been shelved. It's not just a box, as some of the victims refer to cold cases. Like, this case is still active. This case is still being worked, and the family does inquire about this case rather frequently.
What do you believe it will take to get this case solved and bring that family some justice?
Just continuing to follow the leads, continuing to pursue, even the smallest of details, and also for witnesses to come forward. People change their opinions on certain individuals. They might have been close to the suspect in the past. They might have been afraid of the suspect in the past, but things might have changed. They might want change themselves. Maybe they're tired of this individual. Maybe they're tired of this individual taking advantage of people, and they want to stand up, and they want to take that risk and come forward as a witness.
Is there anything else you think that people sitting at home and hearing about this case on the anniversary of George's death, anything that they should know?
He was loved. He made some mistakes, but his family loves him, and they inquire about him all the time.
Detective, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate your work on the case and for coming to shed some light on what's going on with it, the status of it.
Thank you.
Join us next week on KXAN Plus for another episode of Unsolved Central Texas. New episodes air every Thursday at 1. And watch any episode anytime. Just go to KXAN.com or look for the KXAN Plus Originals category on our streaming app. We'll see you next week.